In this video, we'll explore the difference between global and local variables in Python using an analogy involving the famous Las Vegas. Imagine Las Vegas as a blue square which represents a Python function. Everything outside of Las Vegas symbolizes the outside world. Now let's say a party is happening inside Las Vegas. We'll assign this event to a variable called happensIn. If we print this variable inside the Vegas function, we'll see that the output is party. However, if we try to print the same variable outside of Las Vegas, we get an error. That's because the happensIn variable is local to Las Vegas and only exists within its boundaries. So when it comes to local variables, just like the saying goes, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Let's look at an example in Python. We have created a function called Vegas. Inside this function, we have a local variable called happensIn that we make it equal to party, and we're going to print this out. Finally, we're going to call this function Vegas. When we call it, we can see that the variable happensIn is printed out in that in Vegas we have a party. We can comment this out and also try to print this variable from outside of the function. What happens is that we get an error because the variable happensIn is local and does not exist outside of the function Vegas. In this next example, let's assume that nothing happens outside of Vegas. We'll store this in a variable called happenSout. When we ask what happens outside of Vegas, the output is nothing. Nothing happens outside of Vegas. Now, if we ask inside Vegas what happened outside of Vegas, we also learn that nothing happens. This is because the variable happensOut was created outside of Vegas, making it a global variable. Global variables can be accessed both inside and outside of Vegas. So when it comes to global variables, what happens outside of Vegas doesn't stay outside of Vegas. In this next example in Python, we have created a global variable called happensOut that has been assigned to nothing. We still have a function called Vegas that is going to print the happensOut variable. Notice that the function Vegas does not receive any arguments. Finally, at the bottom, we're going to call the function Vegas, and we're going to print from outside of the Vegas function the happensOut variable. When we run the code, we can see that in Vegas, nothing happens, and outside of Vegas, nothing happens, meaning that the global variable was accessed both from inside and outside of the function. In this final example, we create a variable called happens and assign it the value nothing outside of Vegas. Similarly, inside Vegas, we create another variable with the same name happens, but inside of Vegas, a party happens. When we access the happens variable inside Vegas, it tells us a party happened. However, when we access the variable with the same name outside of Vegas, the result is nothing. Given that we created two variables with the same name, one inside Vegas and one outside, they function independently in their respective spaces. In this case, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and what happens outside of Vegas stays outside of Vegas. In this Python code, we start with a global variable called happens that we assign to nothing. Then we have our function Vegas that also has a variable called happens that we assign it the value of party, and we're going to print this out inside of the function. Finally, we're going to call the function, and from outside, we're also going to print out the happens variable. We can see that inside of Vegas, we have a party, and outside of Vegas, we have nothing. This is because the global and local variable have separated themselves given that they have the same name. Now, there is a way that we can modify the global variable. One way of doing this is by utilizing the global's parentheses, and inside square brackets, we're going to put the name of the variable, which is happens, and we're going to make this equal to party. Now, when we run this code, we can see that both inside and outside of the function, we have the happens variable as party. Another way of doing this, we can go back to our original way of having the code written, is that our function is going to return the happens variable, and we're going to assign this to the global variable happens by making it equal to the function Vegas. When we run this, again, inside and outside of Vegas, we can see that there is a party. In other words, what happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas. If you like this video, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content.